I think this metamorphosis of caterpillar to butterfly is one of the most magical phenomena in nature. And it can be, it's magical just in that transformation. But it's also a metaphor for ourselves, which is inside every one of us is trapped, extraordinary being with, great potential, great gifts. And if you are spiritual, it's a piece of the divine. And yet it's trapped in our human body and most importantly, our stupid constraining set of assumptions. And so the whole point is to shed that as the caterpillar does and release, your potential and who you truly are. And so I think this is a wonderful, wonderful metaphor for that shift.
What the heck do I do with my life? That's not just a question, that's the question. The one that keeps ambitious people awake at 2 a.m., the one that haunts the engineer who's climbed every rung of the corporate ladder and still feels empty, and the one that a billion young people across India and the global south are asking right now, with no clear answer in sight. My guest today has not only asked that question himself, he wrote the book on it, literally. I have it right here. He's led Microsoft India and Cummins India. He's chaired the boards of Bank of Baroda, Infosys, Hitachi, and the Rockefeller Foundation. He's stewarded billions of dollars in clean energy investment across the global south as the chairman of the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet. He's championed 1.8 billion young people as UNICEF's special representative for youth and innovation. And through the Global Alliance for Mass Entrepreneurship, he's on a mission to create 50 million plus jobs, not through corporate hiring, not through government schemes, but by unleashing the entrepreneurial spirit of everyday Indians. He's a thinker, a builder, and one of India's most respected voices on leadership, artificial intelligence, climate, and the future of work. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Luminary Lounge. I'm your host Murali here, and today I have the privilege of sitting across, virtually of course, Mr. Ravi Venkatesan. Ravi, as he wants me to call him, welcome to the lounge. It's an absolute honor to have you here.
Hey, Murali, thank you for that effusive, generous introduction. You've set high expectations. I hope we can live up to it.
I'll start with something which actually intrigued me. This cover is a wonderfully designed cover. The red in the first do and the green in the second do. But what intrigues me is this T-Rex here. This is not a Jurassic Park novel or anything. So how did T-Rex end up representing your philosophy, and what alternative symbol did you fight against?
No, I think the credit is entirely due to the graphics team at the publisher, Rupa, because I hadn't really applied my mind to what should be on the cover and all that. I'd come up with the title of the book, and I'd shared the manuscript of it. And there was this young lady who read it and designed the cover. And she said, I want to attract attention, because today we're all attention deficit. So whether you're seeing this on Amazon or whether you're seeing it on a bookshelf at an airport or whatever, it should draw your eyes to it. And somebody should wonder, first of all, the red will get your attention. Yeah. If that skips, you miss that, then you start saying, what is this T-Rex doing here? And hopefully some people will still admire Bill Gates and say, look, that's a good endorsement. So the credit is due to this young lady. And essentially it comes from in the beginning, I talk about the great extinction 65 million years ago, when an asteroid hit the earth and dinosaurs, amongst more than 95% of all species, perished. And they perished because the change was very abrupt, sudden, and they could not adapt. And the only creatures that adapted were very early small mammals, which hid underground for 100 years. and that's why mammals are the dominant species. So that's what made Charles Darwin reflect that in nature it's neither the strongest nor the fastest that survive, but those that are best able to adapt to change. And this book is all about adapting to the multiple changes that are profoundly reshaping our lives. AI being just one of them, climate being
Yeah,
just another
yeah,
one of them, but all these forces combined. And so these are creating an enormous adaptive challenge for us as individuals, for companies, for organizations, for whole countries. And so the question is, are you going to be a mammal or are you going to be old T Rex? So that was the long story. And I loved it so much, I said, let's keep it. That's
that's great. You also talk about in the book that the next 100 years will bring about more change than the last 10,000 put together. Uh, from your personal journey, was there a dinosaur moment in your own life when you realized you were in danger of becoming obsolete? And how did you reshape the way you made decisions at that time? And how did it change your inner thinking?
yeah. I don't think I had a dinosaur moment. Um, there's this American baseball whatever player called Yogi Berra. Most people today wouldn't have heard of him, different generation. But he said really interesting, profound things in a funny way, which when you actually examine it more closely make no sense. So one of them was when you come to a fork in a road, take it. Well, it sounds good, except it doesn't mean much. But but I I think pretty much have lived that, which is when there is an opportunity that comes your way, examine it, and most of them will not stand up to scrutiny. But don't let your fear hold you back in terms of saying yes to interesting opportunities. So that's how I ended up going to the US. That's how I decided to come back in the mid 90s when India hadn't really taken off. That's how, when I got the opportunity to leave diesel engines and join Microsoft, I took that. And then I made a decision 15 years ago to stop being an employee and strike out on my own and see how far I could get, and so on and so forth. So I've always found a way to overcome my fears and anxieties about whether something will work out or not work out and just plunge into it and work hard. So I don't see that I had a dinosaur moment, but as more recent years, I've been thinking, hey, that was good job so far, but now you're 60 and we're all living longer. So hopefully I'll live longer too. How do you keep reinventing yourself? Okay. And not become a dinosaur at 65. So how do you continue to be on the forefront of things that are shaping our world? So what are some of the most important issues? Well, climate is, even if it's not in fashion today, it's still not gone away. It's one of the biggest challenges we have. So I continue to play some role in that through the Energy Alliance. The big issue is around AI and how it'll reshape society, jobs, and all that. So I'm very involved in that. I'm writing a book. Game focuses on how do you prepare people for a future without jobs. So I think it was more natural in my early years. Now I have to make sure that I don't stick in a comfort zone and I continue to reinvent myself periodically, etc.
And the other thing which actually was very evident in the initial part of the book was your mental code of moving from a pessimistic outlook to deliberate optimism. I think your IIT days is something that you quote of how you were with rough boys in the hostel and how it actually changed you to kind of think about being an optimist. But what was that single hardest line of malware, I would say, in your operating system that you had to delete? And what is a daily practice that keeps you going and prevents it from reinstalling?
So this is, I think, in the chapter on mindset being the software that shapes our lives. And so if you change the software, your life will change. And one of my challenges, which you're calling this malware, is that I was probably born seeing life in a slightly pessimistic manner. So a pessimist tends to assume the worst in any about any situation or anything new that happens. And I wanted to change this about myself. And the book that helped me with that was called Learned Optimism. And it gave a very simple algorithm uh, for change. It said whenever something happens, first of all, catch yourself being pessimistic. So awareness. And instead of a reflex action, make it a conscious, intentional thing. And remind yourself three things. Don't assume the worst case. It could be better than that. Don't assume it's personal. It's not, it's random actually. And the third thing is don't assume it's this bad thing is going to last forever. Okay. So for instance, if you slip on and have an accident and break your leg, okay, you don't have to assume you're going to be crippled for life. And you don't have to ask yourself, why me? It wasn't personal. It was just an accident. So once you practice this enough, you can catch yourself when you reflexively start getting into your pessimistic sort of mode, and you pop out of it a second later. So that's what served me well. And I give this as an example to say anything you want to change in your programming, you can. You know, whether it's the growth mindset or your, let's say you're insecure about money or whatever. If you wish to change it, you can.
And you also write about this satsang, or choosing your community, your personal board of advisors, or you can say directors. So, can you just tell us a little bit about what this means for people who don't understand, and how to kind of go about doing this?
Read the book. Somebody should read those. Can't get all on these nice little youths. Uh, but yeah, I think one of the things that you begin to realize is that as you get older is who you surround yourself with shapes what happens to your life. First of all, it shapes how you think about the world. Okay. So if you've got all pessimists around you, chances are you're going to become pessimistic. If you've all got all people who are worriers, who worry, yeah, you're also going to become an anxious person. If you hang around optimistic people, it's going to be different. Whatever. So one is it shapes how you think. Second is the people who you surround yourself have their networks, and whatever comes to you, the opportunities that come to you come through your networks. So again, your choice of who you decide to be closest to is important. What you strive for, what you believe is important, what is success, right? So you hang out with Nandan Nilekani and you'll start defining success a certain way. You'll hang out with a different person, let's say Adani, you're going to define success a different way. So these things make a big difference. So my point is be intentional in this choice. Walk away from people whose value system or energy or whatever you don't think
Yeah.
is great, and walk
Yeah.
towards and surround yourself with people who you aspire to be more like or who affirm you, give you positive energy. So this idea is an ancient one called satsang. Hang out with the right, yeah, people, satsang. And that's some relationships you can't change. It's a family you're born into, for instance. But most other things are our choices. And I have made very intentional choices to walk towards some people and away from other people. I also introduce this idea of a personal board, mentors, people who will help you make better decisions in life, um, and so on.
That's a very interesting aspect, especially when as we are going into a much more unpredictable, volatile world. Having this kind of a board of advisors probably makes more sense now than ever before. So, That was a wonderful insight in the book. Let's go back to your journey. I have actually been quite intrigued, and I've heard a few of your interviews. So before joining Microsoft, you were leading Cummins India. You came from US to head a plant, and you set up the entire plant, and then you're running it very successfully. What did this teach you about operating in chaos and setting up things from disorder to order that even your later role in Microsoft did?
Yeah. No, look, I was very, very, very lucky that I started out, my professional life in Cummins. Was and remains a great company. And I had mostly fantastic managers. And they gave me huge opportunities well before I was ready for them to learn and grow into. So I was, you know, some very young, 24 or so, when I got to run a small part of a factory. And that was even before school. I went to business school. Then I got to run a very, very large factory in the US, unionized employees, environment, race relations issues. And I was not yet 30. Then I come to India to set up Tata Cummins. It's not like I did it alone. It was a massive team effort. But it was a huge issue because we had no money. There was a operational and strategic crisis. Our partner, Tata Motors, and we didn't trust each other, like each other. And yeah, there were, and this was in Jamshedpur in those days. And one of my earliest meetings was with the scrap mafia. So they come in and with guns and they say, look, you look like you're young and foolish, came from America. Don't disturb the existing arrangements. So so there was that. Then as later on, soon after, I became the chairman of Cummins India, and I very foolishly, recklessly began changing a legacy organization, and I hit all the resistance,
Mhm.
and the employees who were pissed off at me or the way I had to handle them when running to the Shiv Sena to Bala Saheb Thackeray in those days, and he promised vengeance. So it got very complicated and ugly. And learning to deal with that was very important. So I've been running for counsel to Rahul Bajaj in those days, who was the patriarch of industry in Pune, and then Sharad Pawar, who was a, a political godfather. Yeah. And they gave me great counsel on how you do change management, how you need to get your key stakeholders on your side before you do these things. Um, how even if you fire someone, you should do it in a way that leaves them as an ambassador for the company and for you, not in some way where they're looking for vengeance. So I learned a profound amount on these matters, which served me well as I went into Microsoft, Bank of Baroda, and so forth. But I would say much of the foundational lessons on people management, core values, um, thinking about power and influence, and knowing how to turn those things to your advantage was all learned through these experiences.
I was reading through one of your LinkedIn posts, and
Sorry.
you talk about how the hardest part of reinventing anybody's career is to let go of their identity.
Yeah, yeah.
And you have moved from one big job to another, bigger responsibility, heading Microsoft India, and then redefining the entire, I would say, the image of Microsoft India in India. So this part of letting go of your identity, how does one practically do that?
It's very difficult, and I wouldn't say I've any means uh, successfully dealt with that issue myself. It's a journey, very much work in progress. But um, yeah, there's the story of Buddha, seeing the three signs and then realizing, look, this life of a prince is not for him, and he goes off and becomes an ascetic seeking realization. So there are these moments which happen to all of us, which reminds you of something powerful and gets you thinking. So many years ago, I was quite young, and I was the MD of Tata Cummins. It was now mid 90s or something. And I went to the used to go to the company in a car, which the company provided. One day I went in somebody else's car, or I think I drove myself. And normally the watchman all salute sharply and saying, Sava again. The bugger that day comes and says, who are you? Okay. So what you realize is he's saluting the car, not you. And the car is a proxy for the CEO. So, so I never forgot that because it reminds you that don't get confused by the job and the title. Those are temporary. Um, they're there for a short time. For instance, I laugh at all these most powerful businessman award, most powerful woman award, most okay, because the award is really for the company and its importance. Okay. So take Chanda Kochar of ICICI. She was celebrated CEO, but once you separated ICICI from her, I bet most of the viewers are saying, "Who's Chanda Kochar?" and they'll have to look her up.
Yeah.
You know, or even great people. Nobody remembers, the past cricketers. So you have to remember that your job, your success, your title, all these things are not your identity, and you have to figure out who are you then. And that takes a lot of courage because you have to walk away from those things that you've got wedded to. But the problem is you construct a new identity. So it's not like you don't care. You very quickly adapt and created a whole new identity. So who's Ravi today? Well, he's a social entrepreneur and writer. Okay. So it's not like you've shed identity, you've just mutated it.
That's true.
Now, can you even give that up? But this is very hard, right? So some Ramana Maharishi may have achieved it,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
where he was beyond identity. So that's the sort of end state, at least I'd like to get to, but it doesn't matter. I can't say that's where I am today.
That brings me to a very interesting concept again when you speak about the change in identity is the change in thinking from the mindset of scarcity to abundance, because early part of life we are always chasing something because we don't have it, and later once we achieve it we know that there is abundance in the universe. So this change in mentality from scarcity to abundance, how does one achieve it and why is it so important?
Mhm. Yeah. So, first of all, you have to be aware of this idea of scarcity versus abundance, right? So, it's a very, very foundational concept, which I think most people don't think about. They're all victims of it, but um, they don't think about it. And in my book, I do discuss that as well. Let's say that the reason why you should cultivate an abundance mindset is A, you're happier if you're not than if you have scarcity. And if there's empirical evidence that you'll be more successful if you operate from a sense of abundance than scarcity. And this can apply to many things. The obvious thing is money. Okay. Many of us grew up without adequate resources. I think it's less true today, more true of my generation. Now, that's where you started, but at some point we were lucky. We got a lot more success, a lot more money than. But if you don't let go of that mindset, even when you have $10 million sitting in the bank, you'll go chasing more money and you'll hold on to it and you'll be mean and stingy to your employees, to your family, to etc. And the only time you'll wake up is in the last moments of your life and you say, oh shit. But by then it's a little too late. So the trick is to catch this nature in yourself, and it has nothing to do with how much you actually have. And I give an example of this beggar lady outside my house who will unfailingly smile and offer you a cup of tea, right? So She's the beggar, and she's saying, "Hey, how's it going today?" And what can I offer you a cup of tea? That's abundance. So it has no correlation to what you actually have. So I was able to work on this scarcity issue from a financial sense. But that's not the only capital. We also have other forms of capital. For instance, helping each other. If you think helping is going to make you less, that's scarcity. If you think that helping others is going to make you bigger, that's abundance. So some people have a real challenge with that. My big struggle right now is around time. I continue to operate with a scarcity mentality around time. So just see how long it has taken for us to schedule this conversation.
That's true.
There's no real logical reason why we couldn't have carved out 1 hour 6 months ago. But I have this thing. So the point I'm saying is start with at least awareness that you have a problem to work on. And then there's a set of ways in which you can gradually cultivate abundance.
I think that's a wonderful way to kind of put the entire concept of abundance and scarcity, especially I think the fact of paying forward and the gratitude that you mentioned multiple times, not only in your book, in your multiple posts and in your interviews. But the other thing which I am sure you're extremely passionate about is this concept of chaos, leadership, and you're dedicated a chapter to it and you speak very passionately about it. So I would like to start with this story that you mentioned about this 11-year-old boy in Ahmedabad garbage dump who led his community to fix basic problems. So it was very inspiring. So what did this boy show you that even veterans see was miss? What did he do that actually gave you that reason to write about him?
Well, the most important message is leadership is not about power or title or position, because that's how most of us define. Leadership is actually how you act. And there are many people who are in positions of great power and authority, like a CEO, who don't have a leadership bone in their body. Okay. They got there somehow. Whereas this boy in the garbage dump is an exemplar of what leadership is. He has no resources, he's young, and he is able to see issues where he can make a difference, like teaching even younger kids whatever little he's learning in school, or during COVID, organizing all the kids to go and deliver food packages to the community around him. These kinds of small things. So the point is, each of us has this leadership potential within us, and we shouldn't outsource it to other people, thinking, "Oh, I'm not a leader; he is," and wait to be rescued. um, but rather in today's world, lean into the challenges that we care about, whatever those challenges are. And it could be in your office, it could be in your home, it could be a societal challenge, whatever. But as you do that, you find that you'll empower yourself more and more. You'll grow in your self confidence. You'll grow in your influence and impact. And in a world where AI can do more and more things, the one, I think, Brahmastra, or the ultimate skill, which is unlikely to be replaced anytime soon, is leadership. So if you're actually an effective leader, you can get people to follow you with influence rather than power and accomplish things. You don't have to worry about AI and layoffs and any of those kinds of issues. You're going to be just fine.
The chapter on leadership actually moved me the most in your book. And there is a question in the last chapter of your book which says, what actually changed you in this entire book? And I felt my answer to that question was that chapter on leadership. You talk about simply get going, you know, you should not kind of wait, think, overthink, become good at sense making and storytelling, be a good storyteller, develop courage, which I truly loved, earn and retain trust, and understand power and influence. Now, if I were to ask you to pick one of these different parameters of what defines or what is required for leadership, which one would you choose and why is it?
Courage.
I thought so.
Yeah, courage is the most foundational element of leadership. Because what is courage? The courage is the ability to act despite your fears. It's not like a brave person doesn't have fears. It is that she or he doesn't slow down because of it. So the courage to be able to take risks, the courage to be able to take decisions and know that it may not turn out the way you want, the courage to recover from failure is important. The courage to do what is I think the most difficult thing in today's environment is the courage to do what is right, um, rather than what is convenient. So we're living in a polarized world in every country, a polarized society. It is so easy to cozy up to power. Okay.
Yeah.
So you get all kinds of rewards for that. But the courage, it takes real courage to say, no, I'm going to walk my own path. So like that. So I think it's the most important quality. And luckily, it's something all of us can develop. It's just like, as I say in my book, like a muscle that gets better and stronger with practice.
Thank you. In fact, I think the toughest part of this courage is, as you said, to make the right decision, the ethical decision, and to do what is right. We talk about this ethical decisions that a person needs to make, and I will quote probably Clayton Christensen's book of How to Live a Good Life. Can you just talk about how one person keeps this character intact and strengthens one's character during the life?
Look, I'm not an expert on character or anything. I'll tell you how I try to do it, which is the single most important quality I think is um, being reflective and introspective. Okay, so you making a decision and then realizing, "Shit, that didn't feel good," having regret, and then examining that. Suddenly a thing came to mind. I was one day in a car in Delhi, and I was eating some probably pistachios. And there was this little beggar boy outside who knocked on the window. And I didn't want to give him money. So I, I rolled down the window and gave him two pistachios. And it was a traffic signal. So we were waiting. He ate it. And his eyes lit up with joy. He'd never tasted something so good. Then we drove away. And I had great regret that I didn't give him the whole bag. Okay. It's a small thing. But then afterwards, it haunted me. So I said, why couldn't I have been more generous in that moment? How can I be more generous? And how do I stock my car with lots of goodies and fruit and whatnot that I can just distribute? And it was part of that journey towards abundance. Okay. And that's part of how you build your character. You just become aware of your actions, your feelings and emotions in response to your actions, and and critically examine, look, does it is this who do I respect this in myself or do I wish to change something? And then you change it. And then from this, your character evolves. So you do something wrong. For instance, you lose your temper with someone. Typically, it'll be with your spouse
Pulse.
or children or your mom or someone who's irritating. And then you feel bad about it. Okay. Then you say, why did I do that? Okay, there was good provocation, but I didn't feel good about it. I need not have reacted that way. And then you catch yourself and then you develop self control. That's character.
Yeah.
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 Okay. So it's just being constantly aware of your actions and your emotional reaction that guides you down the path that you should move towards.
Thank you. Ravi, you've been on the board of many companies, big companies. So, to just name a few, Infosys during some of its turbulent years, Bank of Baroda, where you had to turn around the entire bank, a public sector company where you had to kind of liaise with the government and different stakeholders, and of course, big companies like Hitachi and the Rockefeller Foundation. Many of our listeners are doctors who do not probably understand what a board is, and they're probably working themselves in clinics or hospital environment where the decision making directly impacts patients and probably a few people around them. Can you just tell us a little bit about what boards do, one, and second, how do these boards help versus hinder, and what are the structural inside, I would say, systems that are built into good boards which make companies great?
Uh, how many hours do we have?
Well, the entire I have 1 hour of your time, so I think probably this would
Now,
probably
this
take
is
five
an
to ten minutes.
enormously complex question
I know.
with layers and layers that you can unpack. But in a
So
nutshell,
yeah,
look, the board is intended to be the governance mechanism for an organization, a hospital, a company, or whatever. And what does governance mean? That you help the management make decisions that causes the institution to flourish over time rather than languish and perish. Okay. So at the most basic level, it is the single most important function of a board is to appoint the chief executive and also make a decision about when it's time for change. Okay. So that's half the battle. Uh, I think there is another central function, which is compliance, making sure that the management does things in a way that is compliant with the laws as well as the policies of the organization. Okay, that it does that. Another critical piece is disclosure, is the information we are putting out, whether it's financial information or non financial information, is it accurate? And that's what the audit committee of the board does. These are the basic functions. Then there is the more sophisticated and critical function, which is the strategic governance. Is the institution making choices that are leading it to become stronger and more relevant and more impactful? Or is it making bad choices? So this is very broadly what boards do. And Churchill famously said of democracy, it's the worst form of government except all others. And so it's the same thing about boards. You can say it's the worst form of governance except all others. So most boards are, you know, somewhat effective or ineffective. Very few are actually truly effective, well functioning. And the biggest difference is not what procedures do they follow and processes do they follow and all that, but simply who they have. Okay. Your choice of who you have on the board, and most importantly, who's who's the chair and determines whether this will make better decisions or worse decisions. If you have board members, directors who are not competent or are more self-interested than care about the institution, uh, or who have very large egos and can't agree on things, and you don't have a chair who can guide them with wisdom to make good decisions, you're going to have problems. And so it's as simple and as difficult as that.
okay, thank you. Thanks a lot.
A lot.
I know we have paucity of time, but there are a couple of important points or aspects that I would like to kind of touch upon. Is one about the Energy Alliance. This is something, again, very new to all of us. Can you just share a little bit of light about what GEAPP is doing?
Yeah, it's very simple. We set up the Global Energy Alliance about 5 years ago, and essentially to solve a big problem, planetary challenge. There are 1 billion people in the world, mostly in Africa, but quite a few in India and South Asia, who do not have access to any electricity. They're still burning coal or biomass. And the fundamental thing is that energy leads to development. Okay, if you don't have access to affordable energy, you cannot. have economic activity, growth, and development. So, if you want 1 billion people to come out of poverty, then you have to deal with, amongst other things, the energy challenge. And most of them are in the so-called global South, Africa, Asia, and some in Latin. And so we were set up to essentially see if we can eliminate this problem. So that's our mission. And we have goals around 1 billion people having access to electricity, clean electricity, averting 4 gigatons of carbon in this process, and creating lots of prosperity. So we work in about 5 or 6 countries majorly at this point. And yeah, that's what we do.
Any specific country or any place where it
Well,
is working very actively, and
India is
any
probably
story that you can?
India is the
Yeah.
largest country for us because of we've been in some way working here for about 15 years nearly. And even preceding GA, Rockefeller had a team. And so a lot of our work is in India is around two things. One is around strengthening the utilities, or what we call the discoms, the companies that transmit and distribute electricity. They have huge challenges technically, and they also have huge business model issues, which is why almost all but one utility in India is losing money. And so we have a lot of capability in terms of working with the utility in Jaipur or the utility in Bangalore or Mumbai or whatever to uh, dramatically reduce their losses and improve their efficiency. The other major program of ours is how can we demonstrate that access to electricity results in development and prosperity. So one of our flagship programs is in UP, Uttar Pradesh, where we work with a variety of people, and we worked with women producer groups who were packing rations, school rations, under a government of UP program called the Poshan Abhiyan. But they didn't have access to reliable electricity, so they could minimal equipment they had would not run for more than 4 hours a day. Diesel genset was too expensive and polluting. And so GAP came in with its partners, and we were able to give them solar electricity through a mini grid at a very affordable rate. And that doubled their incomes because now they're able to pack for 8 hours instead of 4 hours.
Yeah.
So now we're expanding this sort of work to thousands of women producer groups across the country. Very simple idea, but if you find a way to scale it, it's great. It's hard work because you have to get government, not for profit organizations, philanthropic funders, and solar developers all working together, with us being the glue that puts them all together. It's neat work, but complicated.
That's wonderful. Thanks a lot for highlighting such important, I would say, uh, developmental work that you're doing, uh, especially when it comes to people who really need it. The next thing which I would like to discuss over the next 10 minutes is again something you're extremely passionate about, is artificial intelligence. Uh, your multiple LinkedIn posts, your talks recently, even in the AI summit, uh, uh, talk about how the entry level jobs are the first ones which will be the low hanging fruit that will go to AI. In a country which is preparing students for these entry level jobs, does this scenario keep you up at night?
Yeah, this is one of the very, very challenging things for us. So, on one hand, the good news for India is 90% of our economy is in the informal sector. Um, and it's only 10% of us who work in, like you and I and our audience, in the formal sector, and we pay taxes and we get a salary and all that. But, and so in that sense, AI will not be automating that 90% and creating havoc, which is very different if you're in the US, where 98% of the economy is formal. But the problem for us is um, this sector is very aspirational. A lot of it is IT services jobs. And while the low end IT jobs don't pay well and they're like sweatshops, they're still very aspirational because a kid from a lower middle class background, with great difficulty, the family will educate him or her. Very often, it's the first generation to go to college, and they end up at a entry level job in a TCS or some other firm, and that's that. The whole family moves into the middle class. So this is the aspirational path, and if you break that ladder, then you basically shatter dreams. And so I think this is the big risk for India, that we will create, um, yeah, the collapse of hope, if these entry level jobs get automated at great speed, and we don't create new opportunity pathways for young people. Already, the youth unemployment is very high. A young person below the age of 30 with a college degree is today 5 times as likely to be unemployed as somebody who is illiterate. The illiterate dude will jump on a motorcycle and deliver some package.
Yeah.
The college kid will wait for a good job. Okay. And they're going to be waiting. So that's why already, even before AI has made any great impact, we already have a crisis around youth employment. And now this is likely to exacerbate it, which is why I started Game. And Game basically is trying to say, how do we convert a lot of these young people into small entrepreneurs, not of tech startups and unicorns and all that, but lots of ordinary, mundane, useful businesses. And if we can get a few of them growing to employ 5 people, 10 people, that was the arithmetic in your introduction. If we can create 10 million of these small entrepreneurs creating 5 jobs on average, you get 50 million jobs over the next 10 years or something.
Yeah. And the other thing which you speak about or you've written about is about the digital literacy, not just being now learning how to use probably the computer or something, but it's actually AI literacy. And for people to learn, experiment, and grow, they need an environment. So, can you just tell us about what you mean by this?
No, look, yeah. So traditionally, we've always thought of literacy as ability to read and write. And then there was numeracy, which was the ability to do basic arithmetic. And you needed these to do anything useful in life. Um, as AI sort of sweeps across society, we will also need to think about what does AI literacy mean. And in the narrowest sense, it is the ability to access the internet from your thing, which is fine. But it's also the ability to use AI, whatever your role is. So in your role and my role, that may be being able to use chat GPT and Nano Banana in a very proficient way or whatever. Um, but then if you're a farmer, what does AI literacy mean? How do I access information and get advice on things that are relevant to me as a farmer? If I'm a ASHA worker, what does AI using AI mean? So I think we need to think about this role specific ability to use AI along with being able to access it. But it goes beyond using tools. It also has to do with having an entrepreneurial mindset. Okay. There are going to be no jobs, but there'll be plenty of opportunities. So if you have an entrepreneurial mindset, you'll find a way to take some opportunity and build something around it and feed yourself. So part of AI literacy has to encompass, you know, a- the ability to adapt to change, the ability to think entrepreneurially, whether you start a business or not is less important. Uh, that curiosity, leadership, all those things are, I think, a more expansive definition of what literacy means in the AI world. Does that make
It's very
sense?
well said. Very well said. Very well said. Has any founder during your in this journey of game, right, where you're looking at entrepreneurial mindset, has anybody kind of shown you that in its purest form, this kind of mass entrepreneurship, uh, yeah, better than a unicorn headline? Can you just share any story out there which is
Yeah.
something which is
So one of our really exciting flagship programs in game is called Women's Economic Empowerment. So we work with small women entrepreneurs or producers, and they may be making some food products, snacks, handicrafts, any number of things. And we help them list and sell on Amazon. And so we have about 90,000 women who are currently in our cohort who are participating in this with excellent results. Um, and I think some of the women, small women entrepreneurs, uh, I think illustrate this really well. So I was in Nagaland recently, and we worked with a fantastic group there called Made in Nagaland. And there was this very smartly dressed, very confident woman uh, who was a small entrepreneur. So she was in a bad marriage and was getting, beaten up and abused and all that. Finally, she leaves, but of course has children and no means of income. And she's completely destitute. Then she runs into this organization which says, "Why don't you start something?" She says, "What do I start? I don't have any skills." So it turns out in the Northeast, they grow a lot of fruit. Most of it rots. So they helped us start a business which was making fermented fruit juices, low alcohol fruit juices. And she started brewing this, bottling it, and she's now built a thriving business. Probably does a crore. She's now, part of our cohort, and she's so self-confident. She's now hired 4 or 5 people to help her, particularly during the seasons. I think that's our archetype of success. Okay.
wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
Thanks for thanks for the story. I think it'll definitely inspire a lot of our listeners.
Yeah.
Uh,
So it's ordinary people doing extraordinary things.
Great. Uh, the next thing which I would like to actually explore is this contradiction in your life. You are technically a global elite. You are from the IIT Mumbai, then you go to Purdue, then you Harvard Business School, then you're heading Microsoft operations for India, then Hitachi board. And now you're advocating passionately for slum kids, mass entrepreneurs. And do you ever felt like an outsider in either world? Because you're sitting on these big boards, but at the same time, you're here connecting with people at the grassroots level.
I think no, I don't. I think this is back to the identity question. These are merely roles, and like an actor in a play, you go backstage and you change your costume and you come back and play a different role. So, so I have a role when I'm on a board of Hitachi or talking about AI or something, and in that moment, I'm fully into that. But then I've also chosen to take on two big societal challenges: one around energy, one around jobs and entrepreneurship. And when I am focused on that, that's the role I play. So I don't. Um, none of them are me. I'm the substrate underneath. These are just roles.
That's wonderful.
Isn't
That's
it true?
wonderful.
That's true for all of.
And that's true. But the way you kind of positioned yourself while saying that was amazing. Thank you. Now, the next question comes considering all these roles. How do you manage energy? Your energy, not the global energy.
Well, there's no problem with energy as long as you're doing things that you find purposeful, and which you enjoy, and you're doing with like-minded people. Then you're actually getting energy. See, I think the misunderstanding is hard work. How do you sustain that energy? The problem is never with working hard or long. Problem is with doing things that generate passion, excitement, meaning, satisfaction, joy, all those things. So if you make intentional choices about what you do and you're doing things you love with the right people, it's mostly you're getting energy, not giving energy, or at least there's a good balance. Sure, there are challenges during the day and you have to deal with them. And some days I wake up saying, how are we going to raise money and how are we going to sustain our little NGO? And so it is stressful sometimes, or there's a people issue. But for the most part, if you pick things you love and you pour yourself into it, that's not a problem. As you get older, though, there's a physical issue, which is you do slow down. And so you have to look after yourself better. So you have to eat right and you have to exercise right and do all those things which a younger body can forgive. The body is less forgiving as you grow older. So I think both are important, but mostly I think you were talking about where do you get the mental energy
Yeah, mental energy.
and strength, and that comes from making choices that are aligned with who you are.
You got a extremely rare 360-degree view, which very few people have. You sit in the boardrooms, you are with startups, you are with people who are entrepreneurs, and you sit at the global climate tables, looking at the bigger picture of the entire Earth. So, from where you sit, uh, what do you think is a single or couple of policy blind spots in India uh, when it comes to jobs, education, or energy that you think should change or can change?
Great question. And there are many things, but I would say one of the root challenges is we are very elitist. Um, if you look at what do we get excited about? Okay, and let's name a variety of things. We get excited about tech startups and unicorns, and we get excited about Vande Bharat and bullet trains. We get excited about iPhone and semiconductor um, fabs.
Fabs, yeah.
Um, we, g- Everything, we get excited about large companies like Infosys and Reliance, not the small woman entrepreneur. On any dimension, if you take a look, we celebrate the tip of the pyramid and we ignore how we're going to raise the last person. And as a result, I think 90% of our talent is wasted and actually a drain and a drag on 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 the country's progress. And the root cause is this elitism. Again, you take education, we'll celebrate IITs and the success of the very top IITians, mostly in the US. You know, so this is, I think, our biggest curse. And the difference is stark when you compare that with China. China's success, I believe, very largely has come from caring about how they lift the last Chinese. Okay. And so they've raised the very bottom and therefore the mean and the median. And we continue to just care about raising the top.
Thank you. That's a very introspective thought that I think most of our audience would like to kind of ponder about after this conversation.
And we're all guilty of it. This audience is exactly what I'm talking about, including myself.
I agree. I agree. I would like to kind of wind up with just another point from your book. I know I'm actually telling a lot is what is there in the book, but this one actually hit me quite hard. That the main point in life is not to become a bigger and stronger caterpillar. Now, I'm a big fan of how a caterpillar metamorphoses itself into a butterfly because it loses everything what it is and but still retains the memory of a caterpillar, which is again amazing. So what you say is very powerful, that you don't become a bigger and stronger caterpillar, but you need to understand who you truly are and become a spectacular butterfly that you are truly meant to be. Uh, I won't ask you a question here, but just a comment on this.
Yeah, I think this metamorphosis of caterpillar to butterfly is one of the most magical phenomena in nature. And it can be, it's magical just in that transformation. It's also a metaphor for ourselves, which is inside every one of us is trapped an extraordinary being with, great potential, great gifts. And if you are spiritual, it's a, it's a piece of the divine. And yet it's trapped in our human body, and most importantly, our stupid, constraining set of assumptions. And so the whole point is to shed that as the caterpillar does, and release, your potential and who you truly are. And so I think this is a wonderful, wonderful metaphor for that shift.
Thank you. Mr. Ravi Venkatesan, it's been probably 10 months in waiting to get to talk to you, but it's been a wonderful 1 hour of interaction. And I remember your Diwali post on LinkedIn, which said that you made a resolution to make every interaction with every person just a little more positive.
Yes.
Uh, and whether it's family, a colleague, or a friend, or a stranger, you said, my goal is to leave them feeling a little bit better than before. You've definitely done that to me. And I'm sure you've done that to the audience who's listened to this. And you have mentioned there that you would strive to do that every day with every interaction. So thank you for that powerful message. Thank you for sharing your time, giving your precious time. So on behalf of everyone listening to this conversation, thank you, not just for your time today, but for the way you think, the way you have led and way you lead, and the way you have chosen to spend the most valuable currency any one of us have, which is your time and your energy.
Thank you.
You came in with a T-Rex on your book cover, and you left us now with a mirror to look at ourselves, to see what we can do to make ourselves better, to live intentionally, and also to know what is enough for each one of us. So for all our listeners, whether you're a student figuring out your first stop, yes, a professional questioning your next move, or a leader wondering if your best chapter is still ahead of you, I hope today's conversation with Mr. Ravi Venkatesan gave you not just answers, but better questions. Because as Mr. Ravi says, the right question is everything. And I urge all of you to pick a copy of his book, a wonderful book, and read it. And if today's episode has moved you, challenged you, or made you think differently, please share it with your friend or colleague. Ask that person, what the heck are you doing with your life? And I think that will probably give a better conversation going ahead. You can find his books in any bookshop. And his other book is Conquering the Chaos, which I had written earlier. And you can also follow him on LinkedIn, where he's got close to 3 lakh followers. And his work at Game and GEAPP as well, seeing what he does. This is Murali here on behalf of Luminary Lounge. Until next time, stay curious, stay intentional, and keep shining. Thank you.